Today we talk about another study group, highly interesting too. Tomorrow we've got this topic again, which you just mentioned, and I change. Well, today we talk about the elderly, older people. It's more about independence, performance, and pain, in particular back pain. Well, I summed it up here. So why whole body EMS for the elderly? I think it's a highly exciting topic. Of course, what we need is a relatively high threshold of the stimulus for generating power, strength, and muscle mass. And this high training frequencies, well, collides with the inactive lifestyle of the elderly. We know that only very few people who are older have got a high training frequency that would generate the effects on muscles and power. And then we've got health problems and issues. We have ankle problems, for example, joint problems, and in particular inactive older people, the majority, unfortunately, can be more difficult to be won over for this type of sport. So the question is, can we actually have individualized and efficient movement offerings, whole body EMS? Can we use this for making them more active? We've got two studies dating back to 2013, one 2015 and one dating back to 2016. I would like to guide you through. Partly it's a bit more complicated, but I'm going to explain it in a way that everybody understands and can take a message home with them. So the topic is addressed. Focus is independently living, autonomously living older people. Then easier whole body EMS applications for participants that have more an effect on muscle power. Our objective was to increase muscle power. It was an application that was done in a supine position. How little is just enough for increasing the strength amongst the elderly? We are talking about high ages, but always those living an independent life. It's a group which is of interest to you, in my opinion. And what we try to do is we try to combine whole body EMS and protein administration. We have to talk about protein input, and we conducted two studies right here, and then I would like to talk about back pain amongst the elderly, where the data are not very good at the moment, and this is why I give you an internal meta-analysis. So, first of all, passive forms of application. We tried to do it while people were lying on their backs. What is just effective? Where do we have the threshold of women 70 plus, supine, classic, load protocol, 80 heart, bipolar, current, the way we always do it. And then we've got the problems in intensity control. We cannot use microamperes. Different muscle groups may take different strains, and here it's always a subjective load. We love to work with the CHC scale by Borg, the 10 scale, not the 21. 10 would be impossible in terms of intensity. This is the maximum possibility, and we went down relatively low. It's really hard plus hard and hard plus. This is the range. Normally we work in the range of 6 to 7. For the fragile group, we went down a little bit further, 12-week training, and the goal was the leg force, because for moving forward, it's something that's highly relevant for people when they are older. What did we have after 14 weeks? Interesting to us, always active applications, only a supine position, EMS without movement, or supine and, only light movements. The current and moves along the range of motions. This is the way it was applied. And both helps in a supine position. We have an increase in leg power, 10% in a passive mode. But when they move at the same time, it's a very, very easy movement. The effect is twice as high on the maximum power of the quadriceps. So they should move, and even if this supine application is performed, this is very, very seldom, but anyway, it can be done. And we tried to do it here. We tried to then transfer our results to a larger scale, the Formosa study, the whole body EMS application for women older than 70. What does it mean, these sarcopenia? What does it mean? Only little muscles, obesity, so low level of muscles and high body fat content for the ladies. This affects around 6 to 7% of women 70 plus. And when you extrapolate this, it's quite a number. And those who are not suffering from that are not far away very frequently. So it has an impact on autonomous living, so it's highly relevant as part of disease. What training did we do? Bipolar, 6-second application of current, 4 seconds break. We could have done 85 hertz, 350 microseconds. And then in terms of intensity, we are relatively low, 5 to 6 physical exercises in a supine position. You could see the ladies on the previous slide, 6 to 8 reps and very easy exercises with an instructor. 1 to 2 sets. They need to be looked at. You have to have close interaction with the ladies who never liked sports. It's very difficult to control them via body, the feeling for their body, that was necessary. Then nutrition, multi-protein administration, 0.3 grams per kilogram of body weight, relatively low. And then such a group needs a vitamin D administration, should always be given 800 IE per day, independent of the states. Well, the goals, the sarcopenia is then subject to more faux parameters, muscle mass of the arms and the legs in relation to body height, similar to BMI, muscle mass, legs and feet and legs and arms. And then you've got the gait speed, also highly interesting parameters. Do you know the gait speed of death? Well, there is such a speed, actually. This is 0.8 meters per second. And when you walk slower, normal gait, but not maximum, the risk is high that in the next year you will die because you are so fragile. 0.8 meters, just remember, this is the speed of death. So it's a nice pattern. There is also a book on that. Then also grip force is a parameter, very low. This mixture of functional parameters. Then the force path speed and muscle mass is important in terms of sarcopenia. And there we could do more. And then the body fat contents measured via one of the DXA devices, a standard method in this particular field. The body composition is recorded, and then a CT was then also done, medial thigh cross-sectional area. Then I talked about the criteria, inclusion criteria, very low muscle mass, more than 35% body fat. It's not a rare occasion in, elder ladies. It then, affects about 50% of the elderly. Classical inclusion criteria, exclusion. We have got 3 groups, 75 participants, scroll groups that was administered vitamin D, and then whole body electromyostimulation plus vitamin D, and then the prime group, whole body EMS plus protein plus vitamin D. Our hypothesis, what did we expect? primary hypothesis that muscle mass would then be significantly increase would be much higher than in the pure EMS group, and that would be significantly different from the control group that was only administered vitamin D. A similar situation for body fat, the Z score, grip force, and gait speed. Age, comparable, BMI comparable here, the basal characteristics of the ladies. Well, I don't know whether it's the case everywhere in Germany. We've got a relatively high protein intake with these elderly ladies. It's quite a lot. 0.8 is recommended, but it's not enough for the elderly. A take-home message would be 1.1, 1.2. It should be, and the 0.3. Well, this gave us 1.3, 1.4 grams per kilogram body weight, and then we see whether it was sufficient. So the three groups are comparable, and statistically speaking, this comparability is always important. Our problem indeed was that people, we expected them to be less fit, but in principle, these people were too fit for the purpose of this light application we did with them. Let me anticipate this. 3 times a week, a relatively easy protocol, the supine position, so bear this in mind when you look at our results. Well, I come to this end point. It's too complicated to talk it. There's one thing I tell you, a negative change is favorable. And we look at the individual variables, the Z-score made of muscle mass, and then the grip force and the gait speed. Took more meaningful parameters, muscle mass, fine, nice increase in both groups, and comparable increase, so protein doesn't seem to have additive influence. Maybe the protein intake was too low. Then fat content, the only study where we didn't have a significant difference between the control group and EMS groups. It seems to be the fact when you look at the difference between the two groups on the left, the two EMS groups and protein, here the control group. Well, as opposed to this constellation, there is no significant difference from the control group. So statistically speaking, you could regard it as irrelevant. Here you see a little bit more, a little bit less, yes. There is no more to this statistics. Then skeletal muscles, okay, but body fat. Well, for body fat impact, the overall load was too low. And here in this case, the intensity seemed to be too low, and then a lack of power, which is really relevant, 20-25% enhancement, and a marginal change here in the control group. What do you expect when you only have a low vitamin D substitution? There was not enough intervention. What have we learned? People were relatively performant, and regarding the low intensity intervention, we have to admit the result is satisfactory, even if we expected more. The obesity parameter influence was not very impressive. Also, the abdominal body fat impact was not a major one. No additional effect of the low protein administration, but we had a total of 1.2 to 1.4 grams per day per kilogram. This is the recommendation for the elderly people, and we didn't have any impact. So we took it up in another study. So what can you learn? The intervention was too low application, this way of application only if it's absolutely necessary, when people can stand up, when they can hold themselves up. It's better, you have a better effect, and with slight movements. And then the stimulus intensity has to be adequate. And this is a tricky thing. You need a good instructor that provides safety, but also adequate intensity, and you need this adequate stimulus level. So here, this aspect has to come in. You have to tell people that it's really important not to have this slight tingling feeling, but I have to do more. difficult with such people who have got a very low performance level and then a protein administration level too low? Well, we see. This is the next study then. We performed the same study with men, the Franconian side. In the northern part of Bavaria, men older than 70, sarcopenia, sarcopenic obesity amongst men, lots of body fat, little muscle mass, arms and legs, and this is extreme for men. Well, they've got this round belly and only two little threads coming out of their pants. This is the way you have to imagine them. They don't find it funny because they've got problems moving around and staying autonomous in their lifestyle. Classical, criteria, we defined 100 participants allocated to 3 groups, a control group, again, the vitamin D, this is a must, and then a pure protein group, because we wanted to focus on this pure protein administration, and then the whole body EMS protein. I come back to that hypothesis, muscle mass. We said whole body EMS and the protein group should have better results than the protein group. And what is then tricky is that the protein group shows better effects than the control group that is administered vitamin D. And vitamin D, if you want it, is also an anabolic steroid in metabolic terms, and vitamin D is a hormone or is then formed into a hormone. So the hypothesis was best group whole body EMS and protein, second protein, and third one control group. Comparison. Here, well, it was comparable, same age, roughly the same body mass index. And these, the BMI levels are higher, but they are not obese. You can see that BMI, well, it gives you nothing with such, men and women, because muscle mass, body fat, well, this is computed based on a normal BMI. And there you have to take a very close look. Then gait speed. Faster than the gait speed of death, relatively fit. Despite this sarcopenia, it is a disease. Since October, we call it a disease. And in the future, there will be therapies offered by the doctors, and the health insurances will pay for that. And when you offer intervention here, it will also be for you. And then protein intake and administration, not too bad. This for a nutritionist would be pretty good in terms of protein intake, and see what we can achieve by administering more protein. But it's comparable for the 3 groups here. Whey protein, that was administered clearly higher protein levels, 1.8 grams per kilogram body weight. This is a clear thing, in particular for the elderly. Protein resistance, as it's often called. This protein resistance of the elderly was something we tried to impact on via administering protein. If you do power sports, strength sports, they talk about more than 2 grams per kilogram. But when you talk about the elderly, 1.8 gram is quite a lot. You have to eat plenty if you want to do it via normal food intake. Then 3 times in 2 weeks. This was the standard training, active EMS mode, standing up the way you know it, and the intensity was all. So I do not have the intensity here, but we have a bit more intensity, 6 to 7 and not 5 to 6. This was the intensity you can easily explain to people. And then again, instructor, you need instructors here. People do not do a lot of sports. Protein administration I talked about. Protein adjusted to the nutritional analysis conducted, and then 800 IE, then the pre-state of biological active substances. Then measurement diagnostics, skeletal muscle mass, I mentioned it before, gait speed higher than 10 meters, then grip force measured via dynamometer, obesity, overall and abdominal body fat, body mass index. What about BMI and an actual fat analysis, measurement MRT of the medial thigh? We also did. I'm not going to elaborate on that. It's very close to the classical DXA data, the muscle mass data. So DXA measurement, then power, recorded isokinetic leg power, state of the art. Result here is, first of all, as expected. We focus on muscle mass, a skeletal muscle mass index. Our expectations were whole body EMS plus protein significantly better than protein. So far, so good. But this, was it very, sorry. Did you pay attention? No, you didn't. Because here, we do not have significant differences between the two groups. So a protein similar to, but no significant difference to whole body EMS and protein. But we've got a major difference between whole body EMS and the control group. And here the differences between protein and control are significant. Okay, red is red. Here significant, not as clearly visible, but it's there. Gait, speed, functional variables. Here you profit from physical intervention. EMS protein doesn't help, but it has an impact on muscle mass, and having lots of muscle mass as an older individual is important. We talk about basal metabolic rate, resting metabolic rate, and here similar data for grip strength. But what we are excited to see is total body fat levels. Interesting. We know that protein has an impact regarding body fat levels. A significant difference between the protein group and the control group. Well, this is something that took me by surprise. Protein shows very good effects, and then the combined intervention, whole body EMS plus protein, seems to have a very favorable impact, just like conventional training and protein administration. Here we're talking about people that have no relation, no ties to conventional training, and they couldn't do it due to the joint strain. So for this group, ideal intervention. And then visceral fat, abdominal fat, intra-abdominal fat, to be exact, between the intestines, has got a very high cardiometabolic relevance, a negative one, an adverse one. And my colleagues say this is the root of all cardiometabolic evil, this high accumulation in the visceral region. What you also see, BMI, somewhere in between, no major effects. And this also implies that it's a good indicator for the absolute uselessness of BMI as an indicator of a change in overweight and obesity. Muscle mass increases, fat goes down, BMI stays the same. This is what many trainers in conventional studios find problematic in terms of explanations to their customers. Muscle mass increased, fat went down, and, customers say, you can, keep talking here. I do not believe you, but here, of course, this is something offsetting within the BMI area. And there might be similar effects in the strength trainings. If you, talk about BMI, take it with you as a message for your people in a strength-orientated fitness studio. Other parameters, blood, lipids, there usually we do not have any major striking results, but some results here, despite the significance test. We could ask whether that was a random thing, but what I would like to draw your attention to is power, is strength. Classical example, what you have to do is you have to work, you have to train to change power. When you only administer protein, the muscle mass will increase, but functional parameters will only marginally change. well, no significant change compared with the control group with vitamin D. So far, so good. In my opinion, it was a highly successful study we conducted. This is something I was talking about at length. You have to train these people with an adequate intensity level. Only lying down in a supine position doesn't seem to be effective, in particular when we talk about body fat. So an adequate strain intensity has to be generated, otherwise the results are not substantial. And it's your job as a trainer. It's not an easy undertaking to give people safety and to walk the tightrope between safety and efficiency, to have the adequate strain and exertion level. Is it enough? Could we do a little bit more? This is a tricky decision, and it's always a balance, tightrope app. With these men, undesired side effects, is something we couldn't find with the nearly 200 persons in our study. So we can recommend whole body EMS training for the elderly. And from my point of view, just combine it with high quality protein. We took whey protein, maybe a 4-component protein also does the trick. So the quick availability of the whey protein for these people, this comes in here, and I think people could sort of afford it. It costs you money if you substitute 0.8 grams per kilo body weight. I think I will accompany you through this little study, but the next part I would like to focus on is back pain. I just had a discussion with my colleague, Mr. Wegener, who specializes on back pain more, and we are not satisfied with data in the back pain sector. Luc Behrens, an older study, very good, wasn't meant to be released. An excellent thesis, but there are some smaller methodological deficiencies, and we try to address them. What is the problem? Back pain. It's always a question where there you've got high variance level. Back pain, are you undergoing a period of back pain at the moment or not? So you have to involve many people. We had 25 to 30 per group. Here we've got a lot more, and we had never addressed them before. From my point of view, back pain should be unspecific, not due to a certain risk factor, and they should be chronic. These are the people we're talking about, and there are plenty out there. This would be an ideal group for another study. Currently, we do not have such a survey yet. People who would actually need it have never been addressed because we need a high number of cases. First of all, you have to get these people, and then you have to train them. This is not for nothing. Well, a researcher doesn't get ample funds from the state, but you have to generate the necessary funding. Well, my colleague is nodding his head. We know it's difficult to obtain money. And we said, how are we going to do about it? It was about an application. You file and they tell me, dear Mr. Kemmler, there are no research results. How do you want to do this particular study? Based on preceding studies where we always address the same pain parameters on the scale of 7, we tried to take 5 to 6 similar studies with roughly the same age group. We tried to filter out people who were suffering from back pain and experienced the problem. Always men and women plus 65 to have a homogeneous group, unspecific back pain on a pain scale of 7. 7 was extremely frequent or chronic, and we only included people higher than 5 on the scale of people to whom this is relevant. Then 4 different trials were made with comparable protocols, and this is important. 3 different protocols being applied don't give me anything and don't give me the effective protocol. So we were trying to come up with 4 studies with comparable whole body EMS protocols, very close to your EMS training in the studios. Apart from this frequency, we've got 1.5 times per week, most of you, once a week. Otherwise, in terms of parameters, comparable with classical EMS applications in the commercial sector. So, taken together, the characteristics, you see this table is not as long as the others because based on the various studies, we didn't have so many comparable parameters, but nonetheless, comparability was guaranteed. People, control group, and this were no EMS, and then the group that was subjected to EMS training. Data, mean data from 4 different studies, comparability in terms of age, BMI, frequency of pain. Well, this is a logic thing. We only included those in terms of a rating of 5, a score of 5 and higher on the pain scale. Yeah, it's a meta-analysis. You have to be careful in your interpretation. But we've got first results, both red right here, the control group, frequency of pain, the whole body EMS group, then the strength of the pain in the lumbar spine on the left control group, on the right-hand side, whole body EMS scale was from 5 to 7. And what you see clearly is here we had an effect of 1.0. It's, well, significant from 6 to 5, if you want to name it. It's a clinically relevant fact. It's not only a tiny little bit, but people retrospectively reported this, and this tiny little dot is important. Here, in terms of pain, strength, a significant difference between EMS application, alleviating pain, and the group where it marginally decreased. These people in the university studies, they are taken by the hand, and so they had a slight pain relief. For you, as a take-home message, here on the right-hand side, clear differences between the groups. Briefly speaking, EMS tells us that you can impact the frequency of pain, whether this is something that will persevere and be sustainable in the long run. That's questionable, but for those who suffer from chronic pain, half a day without pain is a major plus. So it's really something we should think about, but we have to do more studies in this field. What could also be interesting to you is we try to compare it with conventional back training. There's also a meta-analysis. A meta-analysis includes all studies in this field, puts it into a pot, so to speak, and takes the essence out of it. Here we had one item 0.1 as a decrease. Here the mean value is 0.3. If you wanted to say, you say EMS is better than conventional strength training that is offered in back training designed to decrease pain. We have got further evidence we provided of favorable effect of whole body EMS regarding back pain, but the definite evidence has to be produced based on a clinical study. This is still in progress. We plan to do so with Cologne and Kaiserslautern, but it's going to be a tough thing to do. Thank you very much for your attention. I was happy to speak to you. Thank you very much.